I'm Katie.
And I'm Caitlin.
And this is the Who Has Time for This podcast, a show where we delve into complex issues through the lens of our own unique perspectives. Today, brought to you by Caitlin, we are going to be having a little discussion about citizenship and what that means to us. So let's hand over the mic.
All right. Yes. So this episode's really meant to be like a dialogue. I mean, most podcasts are, but this is like less fact and research based and more just talking about what being a citizen of the United States of America means to each of us. And so we're going to talk about that. It's a topic that we'll, I'm sure, revisit again. So this conversation isn't over. There's so much to say about how we act in our lives as citizens, especially in today's very fraught and divided landscape. So as we talk through the various ways we engage in being citizens, we'll share the prompts that helped us frame our thinking so that you too can consider your role in the history and future and present of the United States of America.
Do your homework.
Do your homework, exactly. We hope that these prompts are useful and help you learn what it truly means to be a citizen of the US of A. So, have you ever really thought about what it means to be a citizen? The basic definition of a citizen is being legally recognized as a member of a state or commonwealth, either natively or through being naturalized.
I feel like a lot of people who are born in a country haven't really thought about what it means to be a citizen.
I agree.
Yeah.
And then extrapolate upon that, citizenship is the position or status of being a citizen in that country. So it's super basic, like you're a citizen, you have citizenship. I want to explore how the deeper meaning, and actually where I found a better definition that I liked was on the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website, which defines citizenship specifically for immigrants seeking citizenship as a unique bond that unites people around civic ideals and a belief in the rights and freedoms guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. So I really like that whole idea of a unique bond that unites people around civic ideals and beliefs. So if you're born in the U.S., as you just alluded to, citizenship is automatic as defined by the 14th Amendment, which has been in the news lately, grants citizenship to all people born or naturalized in the U.S. and promises them equal protection under the law. That means even if your parents aren't citizens, you are. But that's a whole conversation for another day.
Oh, boy.
We deal with the fallout of this administration's messing with birthright citizenship. So today, we want to focus on that original definition. Citizenship as a bond rooted in shared ideals and collective responsibility, not just as a legal status or a set of personal rights. So what does it mean to be united by civic values, and how can we live that out in today's divided landscape? So I'm asking you that with that lens in mind, we're going to talk about citizenship in three ways: as a responsibility, in relationship to being a consumer, and as a means of belonging. So let me be the first to say that this barely scratches the surface, and we will probably do a part 2 in the future. Without further ado, let's launch right into citizenship as a shared responsibility.
Woo!
Yeah, woohoo. So we Americans love to boast about our freedoms. How can we not? With the opening line of the Declaration of Independence saying, and look, I have my own copy of the Constitution, and it includes the Declaration of Independence. For those of you
showing you that she did her homework.
Yes. For those of
Good
you listening and not seeing the video, I have my little copy. So let me just read you the sentence in the Declaration of Independence about who we are as a country, basically. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Often, the conversation around citizenship tends to focus only on these rights and individual liberties, like my freedom of speech or your freedom of religion, rather than a commitment to each other. But if we go back to that definition of citizenship being a unique bond that unites people around civic ideals, It's very clear
Mhm.
that citizenship is meant to advance the common good of society, and we all play a part in doing that. So if we're advertising citizenship in that way to people who are not born here trying to become citizens, then why aren't we, as birthright citizens, also committed to that idea?
Well, these days,
Yeah.
we're not advertising it to
exactly.
them,
Well,
so.
exactly. Yeah. Right? But maybe if we all thought about it a little harder, we
Yeah.
wouldn't be in this situation. So, I mean, basically, like in the words of Spider-Man, basically, or whoever says this is Spider-Man, with great rights and freedoms comes great responsibility.
Should make like a,
Is it Uncle Ben or whatever?
yeah.
I don't know.
But like we should make like a Constitution themed superhero
Yes.
with great rights and
Yes.
freedoms.
We'll workshop that one.
Yeah.
So here's my prompt. And then Katie and I will talk about this.
Okay.
How do you view citizenship as a shared responsibility? What does it mean to you to carry the weight of civic participation, not just for your own benefit, but in service of others who share this country with you? So I marched in the No Kings protests in June because I was compelled to, feeling like it was my duty and responsibility as a citizen and a participant in our democracy to march for those who can't. And I was especially drawn to the protests after seeing alarming ICE immigration enforcement raids and arrests on the news and all over social media. But what really made me think about my duty as a citizen in service to the common collective good versus my own like personal rights and liberties and comfort was a very stupid piece of backlash that I saw following the No Kings protests. Namely, there's a tweet from some right-wing crazy person named Matt Walsh.
I don't know.
Sure,
Have you
he's
heard of him?
probably like super. I'd never heard of him.
What?
But really? Well, yeah. But after I dug in, I was like, oh gosh, this guy.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people like him. Anyway, this is what he tweeted. All of the people declaring no kings were just a few years ago cheering and enthusiastically submitting as we were locked in our homes and forced to wear muzzles on our faces and compelled to inject experimental drugs into our bodies. Frauds and hypocrites, all of them. Okay, so number one, no one locked you in your home. Secondly, if your mask felt like a muzzle, you were doing it wrong. And thirdly, nowhere in the Constitution does it say we have freedom from face masks. Finally, those experimental drugs that you didn't want to inject were fast-tracked by the wannabe king that we were protesting. It's probably the one good thing that he did in his first term. So you are welcome to march with us. Anyway, equating protesting the power grabs of Donald Trump with COVID lockdowns, mask requirements, and vaccine mandates is an example of a false equivalence argument.
Which we talked about in our first episode.
It is not one and the same of wanting to prevent Trump from forever altering the powers of the presidency to basically turn it into a monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we all reacted to what I hope is a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. But anywho, COVID was a pandemic, a literal global health emergency, and the threat was a virus that we weren't sure at first how it spread or its potential for harm. Like, what if COVID was like Ebola? I think we would have all been very happy to wear face masks and never leave our houses.
Yeah.
Because, the fact that it turned out to be something that, well, for many people was very serious and killed them, and for other people was a cold.
And
I don't
for
know
the
where I'm
people
going with that, but
who didn't see, who weren't personally touched by someone who died due to it, like probably this Matt Walsh guy.
Yeah.
They probably saw it as a big nothing, even though, like, gosh, we saw millions of people die. And all you had to do was wear a freaking mask.
Yeah, exactly. So, and like in a situation like that, protecting the common good of the country, our health and our lives and that of our neighbors and friends and families and loved ones and just everybody comes before our personal liberties and comforts. It's our responsibility to limit harm to the general public, and especially if you want to like make it more personal, to the people you love. In fact, the preamble to the Constitution suggests that the responsibility to all comes before individual freedoms and liberties. And listeners, I am opening my copy of the Constitution once again to read you. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So notice it says we the people, not I the person, and puts common defense and general welfare before the blessings of liberty to ourselves. I'm certain the order was intentional by our founding fathers, considering they were writing it in response to trying to free themselves from a monarchy. Yeah. So that's not to say that in some areas lockdowns lasted longer than they needed to, especially when it comes to schools. I'm acknowledging that argument. I know people are still angry about that. We have a generation of students whose lives were forever altered by these decisions. As a citizen committed to this idea of shared responsibility, I acknowledge the pain this caused, and I hope our leaders learned a lesson that they can carry with them into the next pandemic.
Gosh, knock on wood.
Yeah.
That we don't have one.
Right. But I don't know the way things are going. You know, a lot of the reasons why acting as a citizen with the goal of advancing the good of all the country, like a rising tide lifts all boats, a lot of the reason that that's not like forefront anymore is because there has been a decrease in civic education in schools over the last several decades. There's a creator on Instagram or on social media, I'm sure he's on more than Instagram, named Ben Sheehan. He actually, interestingly, was a writer for Funny or Die. Do you remember Funny or Die, the website? So he's like has his roots in comedy, but he's also like a big politics and civics engagement guy.
Cool.
He just launched in conjunction with PBS a new YouTube show called Civics Made Easy. And
Cool.
like 10, 12-minute episodes every week talking about different parts of how the government works. I think the first one just came out last week, was about the Electoral College. So that's a plug for his whole thing is like trying to bring civic education back to the masses through social media, YouTube, and PBS. So, but he had a video recently that pointed out that civic education has kind of like disappeared basically from the school curriculum. It used to be taught a lot more. It used to be more entrenched in
like school.
Yeah, but we had like what,
one
half
class,
a semester or whatever. Like I think it was a 0.5 credit class.
I was also thinking like, yeah, wow, I never had to like do a homework assignment about what being a citizen means to me or anything like that.
But we make people who want to become citizens coming from elsewhere go through all these hoops
we just
to
take
do
it for
this
granted.
and then like treat them like shit. So, but yeah, we take it for granted. But yeah, he argues that, you know, and he doesn't think it's done purposefully, but like through curriculum changes like No Child Left Behind and Common Core, emphasizing math and English and like history, like that pushes out from a student's school day room for stuff like extracurriculars, like or not extracurriculars, but you know, electives like civics or whatever,
and art and music.
Yeah, exactly. So whether intentional or not, it's just something that happened. And he also pointed out that like in the 60s when people were pushing for the civil rights movement, the part of the reason why that was such a big movement is because people were better schooled on civics and what civic engagement meant. Therefore, they knew how the government worked and wanted to make it work for everybody. And now we've kind of come away from that, which he would say, again, might not have been intentional, but people in charge for the last 50 years probably appreciated that the masses weren't so engaged anymore.
Absolutely.
Yep. So anyway, again, Civics Made Easy. And then there's also Sharon McMahon of SharonSaysSo on Instagram. She has a whole program called Governers.
That's
so
cute.
Yes. It's a book club. It's like programming, you pay for it, but she has free Instagram content, some free Substack content, and then you can become a governed insider and do deep dives on civic education, stuff that used to be made available to us through our public education that has taken a back seat.
But sort of doing your due diligence and learning about these things.
Exactly.
So first thought about the shared responsibility of civic participation was about privilege and individual privilege, and the ways that you use it or acknowledge it or ignore it for the greater good or bad of those around you. So many different kinds of privilege and so many ways to be or to not be privileged. In a perfect world, we would all spend a little time reflecting on the ways we are individually privileged and explore how we can use that advantage, big or small, to help other people. I'm not trying to tell anybody that they haven't had a difficult life, or that they haven't experienced discrimination or faced systems that are stacked up against them. But I think it's important to acknowledge and reflect upon the benefits that you might have from one privilege or another. So I think we often see people feeling guilty or uncomfortable when facing the fact that they have an advantage over another person or another group. We see this so often with like conservative arguments that claim people of color make them feel white guilt, or like feel guilty for being white. Or like sometimes people will look at a group and say, you know, I may have XYZ disadvantage, but at least I'm not that. And they just jump in on the discrimination bandwagon. This is something that a lot of cisgender people in the LGBT community have used to discriminate against trans people. Like, especially in conservative like gay people are like, oh no, but I'm one of you. Even though it's like, no, you're on the list too. But they're saying, at least I'm not them, so pick on them instead. I'll pick on them too.
Yep.
But it's not always this way. So, like, when you look at photos from the civil rights marches in the 50s and 60s, you see a surprising number of white people. And these were folks who understood their privileges and decided to use them to help others.
And also understood how the government worked because they were educated in civics.
You know, if somebody is white or white passing, doesn't mean they haven't had a difficult life. They may have grown up poor. They may have been bullied or have a disability. But if they can acknowledge that the color of their skin provides them some protections and advantages in our current system, they can use that knowledge for good, like calling out racism when they see it and normalizing the behavior like that for people with light skin. You know, normalizing other people seeing a white person stick up and call out those kind of things. Or somebody who may have black or brown skin, but is cisgender and heterosexual, can stick up for the LGBT community, call out homophobia and transphobia. Again, normalizing and setting the example for other people like you to do the same. You know, show up for those who can't do that for themselves.
So, moving on to our next reflection, being a citizen versus being a consumer.
This was such an interesting question. I love it.
Balancing citizenship with consumerism in our capitalist society, in our democratic form of government. It is an interesting situation we have. So, here's the prompt. What does it mean to think like a citizen ahead of thinking like a consumer, especially when it comes to problems that affect everyone, like healthcare, public safety, and environmental protections? So some sub-questions to guide your reflection. Where in your life have you been encouraged to solve a systemic problem by buying your way out of it, quote unquote? Think like buying from a specialty grocery store versus advocating for better public health initiatives for all. How do we shift from private, individualized solutions to public, collective ones? What are the consequences when we approach democracy as consumers looking for value rather than citizens working for equality or equity? And what role does public pressure, like voting, organizing, and advocacy, play in reclaiming our shared power? And as Katie just pointed out to me, behind the scenes, all of these prompts are included in the show notes. If you're listening,
if you want to go home and think about your citizenship.
Exactly. So one of the ways that I think about this individual versus collective movement is the Make America Healthy Again ideology versus actual public health initiatives, which is something we talked about in episode 3 pretty deeply.
But it always deserves to be talked about more.
Yep, it always. So Make America Healthy Again is all about individual choices that lead to, or are supposed to lead to healthier outcomes versus addressing infrastructure systems that would actually make America healthy again. So MAHA is all about individual choices like shopping better and moving more. And yeah, that sounds very basic, but this is like, in an ideal world, everybody would do it. So I guess the real question is, how do we get to that ideal world so that everybody can commit more time to and know-how and money to
I was gonna say,
personal health,
and even understand the barriers and the solutions to it, because I think a lot of people don't realize what's it getting in the way of them being healthy.
Exactly. So one source that I turn to in all this is Dr. Jessica Knurck. She is a dietitian and she's on Instagram, an influencer. She's got a Substack. She's a public health advocate, and she has been just like on all fronts dispelling information that MAHA is trying to make mainstream. So anyway, I'm just going to run through a couple of like public health initiatives that's how I frame this whole thinking like a citizen versus a consumer. So a citizen, I think of how do I make health a public health versus a personal wellness or biohacking opportunity. So a couple of just food for thought. She talks about adopting a systems level approach, focus on environmental and structural changes like better food environments and infrastructure rather than zeroing in on single ingredients like food dye bans and get rid of seed oils, etc. Shifting agricultural subsidies. Redirect government funding towards fruits and vegetables instead of heavily subsidizing things like corn, wheat, and soy, which is cheap, which is why the government subsidizes them, because in an effort to get more food to more people, we're giving the wrong food to more people, basically.
It's actually, I just saw this cool infographic that was like where your food comes from in the United States, and it was like what states farm like XYZ fruit and vegetable. And like corn, just like the whole
thing is corn.
It's all lit up. That was like the biggest amount of farmland.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, MAHA does, like, they point this out, but not in a good way. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, like a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I agree with RFK that there's too much sugar in cereal.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's where it ends.
So regulate food marketing to implement policies to curb aggressive advertising of ultra-processed and sugary foods, especially those targeting children in low-income communities. Because, of course, you're going to buy sugary cereal if you're just being pummeled with sugary cereal ads all the time. What if you were being pummeled with cherries and tomatoes? Like, you will go to the store and think, oh, I should get some cherries and tomatoes. They're summery fruits and vegetables.
The amount of adults that I've met that have never eaten asparagus in their life.
Because asparagus doesn't have good marketing, other than me.
But it's asparagus. Like, I feel like it's one of the big vegetables. Yeah.
Roasted. Salt,
but anyway.
Yeah. So
it's not their fault.
No, it's not their fault. They don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And the point of public health is to make this information knowable to all, not personal MAHA wellness glucose monitor following people. So
yeah, don't promote glucose monitors, promote asparagus.
Yeah, exactly.
That's from our last episode, by the way.
You have to call back. You have to go listen to episode 3. So investing in school nutrition is another public health thing. So boosting school meal programs, they not only tighten standards, but also increase funding to improve the quality of meals served. This was a big Michelle Obama initiative. And instead of embracing her for trying to make America healthy again, she got pushed back like, don't tell me what my kids can eat at school.
And now they're trying to take away preschool lunches for kids who can't afford it.
Exactly. Redesigning the built environment of our cities and towns. So support plans for infrastructure that promote physical activity, walking and biking everywhere, more public transit so we're less dependent on cars, safe play areas that are more accessible and abundant to all, to combat sedentary lifestyles. I mean, if you ever have heard of blue zones, these are the places around the world where people are more likely to live to 100 or more. This is where that comes from. People just walk everywhere.
Yes.
They are outside. They're just eating fruits and vegetables and like limited meat and lots of nuts and seeds, etc. Like, and again, this runs parallel to Maha. Like you said, broken clock can be twice right twice a day, but like it needs to be implemented so that it's accessible to more people. So anyway, broaden public health focus, addressing stress, mental health, sleep, economic stability as part of chronic disease prevention strategies.
Yep, stress kills.
Stress kills. If you're constantly busy because you have to work 2 jobs to make ends meet, you're not like making healthy meals.
You're not going to go for a jog in the morning.
Yeah, you're like stopping and getting fast food, or you're just eating whatever you have.
Or like you buy mac and cheese because you know your 12-year-old can make it while you're working.
Or yes, exactly. Yep. Move beyond ingredient bans. Like, yeah, we don't want like creepy, weird food dyes in our food, but they're like not like as evil. I mean, we don't want them, right?
It's like
we
treating
can all
the
agree
symptom
on that.
rather than the cause.
But exactly. They're often distractions. True health benefits come from comprehensive initiatives, not ingredient swaps, not like single ingredient swaps. And then combating misinformation, which is like the whole thing we're doing with this podcast or trying to do across
Don't even get
our
me
life.
started with like natural ingredients.
Challenge these fear-based wellness narratives and promote transparent, evidence-based communication. And I will again plug Dr. Jessica Knurck. I will link her in the show notes, her Substack and her Instagram. Follow her and just like share her videos because she's great at promoting this stuff. As you can see, I'm like really passionate about public health, which is something I like did not know anything about before this year. But I also want to talk about privatization because if you can remember back to the early days of the Trump administration, when 2.0, when Elon Musk was taking his chainsaw and his Doge through the government, and like the whole point of he was trying to cut costs so that programs can be privatized, like Social Security and the IRS, and like I don't even know if any of that's happening anymore. Like who knows what's going on behind the scenes at this point. But I listened to a podcast, the Money with Katie podcast. I've mentioned her before. And she had a specific episode about privatization versus like publicly funded social safety nets like Social Security, etc. So I'm just going to quickly run through a little bit of what this conversation was about. Just strictly bullet points. I'm not like an expert, but I just think of this as like more prompts for how to think of yourself as a citizen first, then a consumer. Privatization plays a big role in that. So privatization basically funnels public money into private hands. As Katie's guest, Donald Cohen, who wrote the book The Privatization of Everything, the real goal here is how to capture cash, not improve efficiency. Because the whole argument behind privatizing things, especially through Elon Musk's point of view, is that if private companies have control, they are more efficient than the government and therefore deliver goods and services cheaper, more efficiently.
Which is like, because they don't have to adhere to as many safety precautions.
Yeah, and it's not even true, is the point of this conversation. You get worse goods and services that just add costs elsewhere down the line. You know what I mean? So privatization is sold as common sense. Decades of messaging have convinced us that the government is inefficient and that the free market always wins. And what we're seeing from the Doge experiment is that they really could not find that much waste and fraud and abuse. So is it? This is like, you have to always think there's marketing behind everything, and privatization had a lot of messaging behind it.
And like it costs them more than they save to do that.
So public funds often benefit the wealthy. So policies like tax cuts and privatization programs disproportionately reward the top earners, not the general population. And we see that with like all the subsidies that Elon Musk's companies get from the government that he certainly did not try to cut.
And like, has privatization ever helped you, listener?
So Yeah, exactly. So
Think about it.
This Donald Cohen talked about, I think it was in Chicago, like decades ago, they decided to privatize like the parking meters in the city, and it ended up costing like a ton more money, and it was really expensive for everybody. It was a failed experiment. So privatization is not about free markets. It's really state-backed corporate power. It often creates monopolies that are funded by taxpayers with benefits going to corporations and not citizens, as we see as we let corporations and the ultra wealthy get away with not paying their fair share in taxes. So we want to like step back from that and view ourselves, the citizens, as stakeholders in the country, not customers. We have the right to shape public goods and services through democratic processes, while consumers only take or leave what's for sale. So we, as citizens, are stakeholders, not consumers, and that's how we should view ourselves. Public services exist to serve everyone, not just the profitable. A market-driven model prioritizes efficiency and profit and leaves behind those who are most vulnerable or unprofitable to serve. And actually, there was a Sharon McMahon Instagram post about like, it's not supposed to be profitable to like help the disabled. It's not supposed to be like who does efficiency serve when you're talking about like, a child with special needs? That's not the point of the government.
Tweet that was like the USPS loses like whatever $1 billion every year, and it's like it's not a business, it's a service.
Right, exactly.
It costs money to provide this mail service to the entire country.
Right.
Like that's not supposed to be making money.
The government is not a business and should not be run like one. Yeah. And one take that I saw about the whole Doge thing was that Elon Musk learned how the government works through Doge, and we all had to just watch as it happened.
Oh my god. Really though? Yeah. Like what a dumb asshole.
It's like, well,
being to get demonetized. Not that we make any money, but I just swore.
Elon, I know you don't like the Trump's big beautiful bill, so like channel that anger into helping us out.
Yeah, be that broken clock for us.
Be that broken clock. So accountability flows through us in a democracy, us, the stakeholder citizens. When government programs fail, we can vote and organize and demand change. But if things are privatized, it shifts the power to the corporate boards and not the public. So we don't want Social Security to become privatized because it'll be more efficient. No,
it's just going to line the pockets of the shareholders.
Exactly.
Instead of going to the people who have paid into it their whole lives.
Exactly. Shared investment builds shared outcomes. Public funding means we all chip in and we all benefit, creating systems that are rooted in equality and equity and not personal gain. So whatever it is, whether it's healthcare or education or whatever, but one quote from that Money with Katie podcast was Katie, who does not have children. She says, I might not have a child myself, but I recognize it's in the best interest if children are well educated, because well educated children go on to be well educated workforce contributors. Therefore, I would expect my tax dollars to be used for public education. Education is a public good. So, therefore, as a citizen, it would behoove me to support good public education with my tax dollars.
Absolutely.
Right, so that's where I hand it to you.
Yeah. Well, I am kind of going to piggyback off of everything you said, Caitlin. Start off like how personally this question resonated with me, because I try to do like a lot in my individual life to like lessen my individual like carbon footprint, to do what I can just by myself to help the world and help others, like from like eating a plant-based diet for the last, I don't know, like 16, I don't remember, years.
Yeah.
Trying to buy like recycled paper products, or like use towels and rags when I can so I don't waste the paper products. Trying to find alternate solutions to like single-use plastic items whenever that's economically possible.
Yep.
The thing is, all of these choices are more expensive in our current system.
Yep.
So I can't afford to buy 24 rolls of recycled unbleached toilet paper for $50. That's just not possible. I can't afford to do my grocery shopping supporting the local organic market each week.
Right. You know? And I just really quick want to jump in. So I was making like a big Costco order recently, and they had dish detergent pods that don't have any wrapping.
Mhm.
And I really wanted to buy them, but they're like, I don't know, like $60. And
Yeah.
I was showing my husband, Jason, I was like, okay, here's our Costco list. And he was like, we cannot do $60 dishwasher pods right now. He's like, when we have more money, sure, we can do with all that, but we can't. I gotta stop that.
I'm gonna put my plug in for
Yeah.
Blueland.
Okay.
They have little pods, yeah.
All right, great. Good to know.
I use them for a lot of household
Nice
things. It's great. By the way, look at Blueland. They like trying to eliminate single-use plastic.
Love that.
In a lot of household cleaners and stuff. So anyway, much like when we were talking about like the individual pressure to be like healthy, like the pressure is on the individual consumer in our current, the status of our country. So all the pressure being on the individual consumer means a world where we can't afford to buy what's right. Like, I'm not going to blame the disabled woman who is on limited Social Security and can't keep more than $2,000 in her savings account for shopping at Walmart and Dollar Tree, despite their horrible business practices and horrible employee treatment and horrible environmental impact, because she can't afford to shop somewhere else. So how is she like supposed to be able to help like on a civic level and do what's best for the greater good of her fellow citizens when it's just out of her economic reach? That's why it's important to be involved at, lower political levels rather than just voting in your presidential elections. It's important to just know what's going on. Look at Zoran Mandami winning the New York City Democratic mayoral primary. Doesn't mean he's going to be the mayor, but he canvassed all over the city using just small donations and dedicated volunteers, and he beat Andrew Cuomo. He ran on a platform that's advocating for things like city-owned grocery stores with lower prices, free bus transportation to get to those kind of places, no-cost childcare, adding renewable energy infrastructure to schools, freezing climbing rent rates. Like, those are all things that can help the individual do what's best for the group without just having to like putting the pressure on them and their individual consumption, if that makes sense. Yep. So in order to steer mindsets away from like the individualist consumerist solutions, we have to examine our own communities. We have to work with and advocate for those who are working toward more systemic and collective solutions.
Absolutely. All right. And then our last prompt is looking at citizenship as belonging. And I want to credit this to Pantsuit Politics, which is a podcast that I listen to religiously. They ran a special premium program this summer called Reimagining Citizenship, which is what inspired this whole podcast episode. And they, for the month leading up to 4th of July, they each day released a little mini episode that talked about like looking at citizenship in different ways so that you can reimagine citizenship, exactly what they said. So one thing that they talked about was citizenship as belonging, and I really liked that, so I wanted to put our own spin on it.
Yeah.
So our prompt here is: the question of who belongs and who is excluded has always been a defining tension in this country. So, what does citizenship as belonging mean to you? When have you felt that belonging? Or when have you felt its absence? How do we make space for more people to feel like stakeholders, not outsiders, in the project of this country? So, to guide your thinking, has there been a moment when your rights or security made you feel anchored in your citizenship? When have you seen or experienced that belonging challenged or denied to others? What would it take for citizenship to be a truly inclusive bond, one that says, you are not a threat to my belonging, you're part of it? I think this whole idea of belonging in a few ways. Against the backdrop of our current landscape of immigration, I really feel for the people who come here regardless of how they entered the country. And maybe I don't live near the border, and I can understand why when there were so many people coming across the border, if you lived in a border town, why that might have felt unsustainable. I get that. But that's not the people crossing the border's fault. It's our immigration system's fault not being updated in decades and decades and not having the proper funding to get people into the system and put them through the legal process of becoming citizens. And you have to understand the reason so many people are coming to our country is because of the destabilization elsewhere, often caused by us.
I was gonna say.
And like literally, so the reason I plot this all out is because I want to say, I don't care that people are coming across the border. I don't care. Good, come. I want you to come here. And I don't understand the hatred other than the obvious otherness.
And looking at like our great grandparents or whoever came over here, they were treated like crap. And now a couple generations later, there's people in our families treating like it's all the history is forgotten.
There's no empathy. And yes, I understand that like my great-grandfather, whoever my great-great-grandfather came over the right way, the legal way or whatever, but like think about it back then. There was like way less people and the system was built to be able to handle that intake and then add like a century and never updating that system. We're quite behind. And the only real way out of this is updating our immigration infrastructure and making it possible for people to come, making it easier and possible to make people citizens of the country when they come.
I remember talking to somebody at my old job like 7 or 8 years, I don't know, a long time ago, had immigrated to the U.S. And she was talking about her concerns about immigration, and she's like, well, I did it the right way.
Yeah.
And I think that they should have to too. And she goes on to talk about how it was so expensive and she almost couldn't afford it. It's like, so don't you see how it's too expensive for a lot of people, and it's that way is inaccessible to a lot of people, especially people like fleeing from
persecution or like being targeted by gangs. And I'm not saying I don't want people in gangs coming and causing more gang violence here. Nobody does. Nobody wants any gangs anywhere.
Yeah.
And like a lot of that is again answerable by an answerable problem or a problem with the solution with a lot of the stuff that we were talking about, like making it easier to live in America in general would go a long way to decreasing crime, poverty.
And like, do we really want America to only be accessible to people of a certain socioeconomic class?
No, because
is that what we're working toward?
We'll all end up getting deported.
Like, you have to be able to afford to do it the right way. I probably couldn't.
I couldn't.
Like,
I can't.
If I was trying to like immigrate here right now.
Not me, not with 2 children. I couldn't afford it. So yeah, I think everybody who longs to become part of our country should have that chance. And that's how I see belonging. I also see it from the flip side. So like this whole like digital age and fracturing of politics and like the media landscape has lent itself to like a lot of more independent journalists and content creators becoming main sources for news. And sometimes I worry that people criticizing the Trump administration who do so like outside of like mainstream legacy names, like I wonder, like, are they going to be like targeted and vanished? Like, I don't know.
Like, that's like, where I get a lot of my information is from people
and
who
so
I trust over time.
Exactly. That makes me kind of feel like, I guess the connection there is like, I feel like as a white middle-class woman, my rights and security to like say what I want on Instagram are great. But then I wonder, like, what if someone who was not white was saying stuff on Instagram and then suddenly they vanish? I don't know.
Going back to your civic duty of because you have that protection of your whiteness, use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then the social safety net aspect. If we talked about this, we the people, in order to promote a better nation, basically is what the preamble said. We the people. So if we ask our wealthiest who are among the people to make the commitment to all citizens by paying more in taxes, which is a part of being a citizen of the United States, is that taxes are levied against you or through your property, income, etc. Like paying taxes is part of the American citizenship. Right? And the point of income taxes is so that it is proportional to your wealth. Therefore, if you are a citizen, you should be happy to pay the proper proportion of your taxes to this place you call home, Jeff Bezos. And doing so, we strengthen the social safety net for everybody helping to make everybody contribute more to society and the economy. The more people who can work or just like buy goods and things creates a stronger economy. We can innovate. We can make our nation stronger. That would be an excellent way to cement citizenship as a belonging for everybody who lives here.
So talking about, who belongs and who doesn't belong, and going back to the beginning of the episode where you referenced the Declaration of Independence that states all men are created equal. Well, that's leaving out 50% of the population right there from the beginning of
our country,
our colonized country history.
Yep.
And also, we can't forget that this document was written and signed by people who owned slaves. That's leaving out another huge portion of our population.
Great point of reflection.
Yeah. These men who were slaves were not included in this Declaration of Independence. What about the Native Americans whose land we stole to declare our independence on top of? We have been excluding people from the very beginning. We've seen so many hard-won victories from the marginalized in this country, from the abolishment of slavery to women gaining the right to vote to marriage equality. These are victories that the citizens of the United States have shed their blood, sweat, and tears for. And we can't lose sight of those battles and become complacent when things become comfortable for us as individuals. We still have a long way to go on all fronts, and we have to continuously keep fighting for our rights and the rights of our fellow citizens.
Because in conclusion, yes, citizenship is a right, but to be an engaged citizen is a choice. And in times like these, we can't afford to be passive. So if you value citizenship as a responsibility, think like a citizen before thinking like a consumer, and embrace citizenship as belonging. Congratulations, you have passed the Who Has Time for This podcast bona fide American citizen test. So please keep channeling that energy into fulfilling the promises of the American dream for all. Because even though I don't have time for it, I still believe in the greatness of this nation, and I'll work toward it every day for my kids and for my family and my friends and myself and everyone else who dwells within these borders.
Absolutely.
So
on that note,
yes, what are we making time for this week?
Besides staying up on our civics.
Yes.
Actually, I recently made time to design this awesome art therapy metal skull shirt that I love so much for my art therapy business. I know, I just got it in the mail, so this is my first time wearing it. I'm very excited about it.
Yes. So for those listening and not watching, she's wearing a black t-shirt. It says art therapy, and it has cool. It's
like skeleton. Metal, kind of like Metallica font. Yeah. And I drew this skeleton holding some paintbrushes with some lightning. And it's just a badass, silly art therapy shirt.
Love it. And then I'm wearing a classic Old Navy U.S. flag t-shirt, and that is important because we're recording this the weekend before 4th of July. And I'm making time to reclaim the American flag as a patriot, because the red, white, and blue is not reserved for MAGA, and being a patriot sometimes means you take a long, hard look at the current state of your country, and you manifest the future you want to see. In the words of Cory Booker in his long 25-hour Senate speech, if this country hasn't broken your heart, then you don't love it enough. And then to close with something from Pantsuit Politics, which inspired this whole episode, being a citizen and examining citizenship sometimes means loving our country, even when it feels like it doesn't love us back. Oof. So, on that note, we will see you next time. We hope that this has been helpful and that it gives you something to think about.
Sayonara.
Sayonara.